Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners, it's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. Learn more and subscribe today at eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast. And now, here's your host, Frank LaRosa.
Hey everybody, welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. I am your host, Frank LaRosa, and I am joined today. Today's going to be a very interesting conversation. I'm going to get very passionate because it's a topic that I am very passionate about, a little geeky about, and that is processes and systems within your business. And so today I'm joined by Kate Guillen, who is the founder and lead coach of a company called Simplicity Operations Management. Kate, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It's awesome. I got someone from your organization reached out to me, and I get a lot of like, hey, we want to be on your show, whatever. Most of the time I'm like, nah, not interested. This isn't relevant to my audience and the people I'm trying to add value to. And so I think her name was maybe Courtney Riggin. I think she had emailed me. And I was like, this is exactly who I need on the show. So
awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah, so I'm really happy. And so for those of you that are listening, you want to check us out definitely on, we have a YouTube channel, so you can see Kate and I talking and going through our stuff. And if you can follow me, I talk with my hands a lot. So, but this show also comes in a very timely manner because we were supposed to do this show a few days ago, and I had to cancel because I had a client come in at a decent sized RIA, two partners of an RIA come in for some coaching. And one of the things that we realized, which I'm starting to see a pattern of, is, so they were like an RIA by accident, meaning they've accumulated $500 million. I had another one that's like $1 billion, and they don't really know how they got there, other than they just kept bringing clients in, and now they have this real business, right? They went from being a practitioner at a wirehouse firm to running this business, and they get stuck. And part of our conversation this week was like, what do we do to systematize what we're doing? Because we can't do it all, right? We have an assistant, but she can't do things. So I'm doing the reporting, and I'm sending out this and emails and stuff like that. So this podcast couldn't have come at a better time. So for my audience, Kate, why don't you just maybe explain a little bit about who you are and where did this, Simplicity Operations Management come from, and how does it help advisors and RIAs?
You got it. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I've been working in the financial services industry for about 10 years. I started at a broker-dealer and eventually left the broker-dealer for an RIA. I've always worked in an administrative capacity, started as a CSA, joined the RIA as an operations manager. And when I joined the RIA, that was my first introduction to a CRM. And at the time, we were using Redtail as our CRM, and I was lucky enough to attend one of Redtail's Redtail Universities, which is an awesome crash course in the overall functionality of the system. And with the RIA that I was working at, we were really only using Redtail as like a glorified Rolodex. All right. And so we had client contact information, but we were not taking advantage of all of the other bells and whistles that Redtail has to offer. So
that's like 98% of the advisors out there.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And so I, after attending the event, it completely blew my mind all that the system was capable of, which was a heck of a lot more than a glorified Rolodex. And I recognize, like you, I'm a systems and operations geek, and I recognize that if I sunk in some serious time, the system had the capability of really solving a lot of the operational issues that were affecting our firm, kind of like the guys that you're talking about. We were in a hyper growth mode. We had a relatively new team. We were constantly reinventing the wheel every single time we went to do something. And I recognized that if we just standardized the way we operated and incorporated things like workflows and a task management system and a calendar management system and a pipeline management system, our lives would be infinitely easier. So I did just that. And I took, at the time I was the most senior person on the team. So I was heavily relied upon for what are we doing? What are we doing next? Who is this? How do I find this? Where is this at in the server? And I recognized if I just took all of that information out of my brain and documented it in Redtail and tasked it out to the appropriate people on my team, everybody could operate independently and we could deliver that high touch client service experience over and over and over again without things slipping through the cracks, balls being dropped, or having to go to 5 and 6 different systems that we were using to figure out what we were working on. And so I recognized by way of this Google forum that I was a member of, that there were a lot of advisors out there that used Redtail that didn't have an ops person in their office to build out these processes for them. They were all just kind of figuring it out, wheels spinning, wasting tons of time without any real knowledge of how the system functioned. And I thought, man, wouldn't that be a cool business idea? So I started Simplicity Ops as a way to offer my expertise to help, advisors and their teams design and implement scalable processes within their CRM to deliver a high-touch client service experience, save themselves and reclaim their time and be spending more time doing what it is that they love doing, what they're good at, and not in the minutia of running, the technology of their practice.
Wow. So this is right along the lines of this new book that I'm reading by Dan Sullivan, who is many people know him. He does strategic coach, right? A new book that came out called it's Who Not How.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, which I gave these guys one of the books when they were here, because they kept saying, how am I going to do this? And how am I going to do this? And I went, no, it's not how, it's who is going to help you do that. Exactly. So that you can go out and do what you do best. And that is go in and find client assets, right?
Exactly.
I'm trying to convince them to hire a chief operating officer to help them with those things. Because I'm like, why are you interviewing? Not that assistants aren't important, right? They are critical to the organization, right?
Absolutely.
But if you look at what their hourly rate is per, based on what they make, spending time interviewing support staff is not a good use of their time when they, in their world, their average client is about $5 million to $10 million. So that's where they need to go. So anyway, I do talk to a lot of advisors, RIAs, and this is the key area. This is a key concern of ours. So from your perspective, and there's Redtail, there's Salesforce, there's any number of Microsoft Dynamics, there's all sorts of systems, but I would say probably Redtail and Salesforce are the two biggest ones. And exactly to your point, advisors use maybe 10% of what the system is designed to build. ACT, people still, I think, use ACT. I don't know if they do or not, but
Fox.
yeah. But I think that from what my experience, Redtail and Salesforce seem to be the best at integrating into all the other systems. So, but from your perspective, what are the three main areas that advisors should be looking at right away? So let's say I'm an advisor, I'm having these problems, you come in and you say, listen, here are the three things you need to automate right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. So we obviously preach that the CRM should be the hub of your practice. I am a firm believer that your CRM should be where you go for anything client related and anything, operational in nature or firm related. And I mean, so I'll give you 5 things. Okay. So we've got 5 core.
5's better than 3. So that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got 5 core competencies, which are like the 5 key features of the CRM: contact management, task management, calendar management, pipeline management, and account management. And what I mean by this is, so advisors are notorious for chasing, the bright, shiny objects. And one of the things that I see a lot, which is a common mistake that I see a lot of teams run into, is they chase all these bright, shiny objects and they pile on too much tech without having built the foundation first. And the foundation is your CRM. And like the foundation of the foundation is the contact structure. Who are the contacts in your database? They all need to be labeled in some sort of organized fashion. I actually have a resource on my website. You guys are welcome to go check out, called a style guide, that essentially is like a hierarchy of how to organize contacts in your database. And this sounds so, silly, but it is so important, and something we run into so often, where teams don't use their CRM because they can't find anything. And unless it's organized, you're never going to be able to find anything. So starting at that contact level, building out that foundation, and then standardizing the way you manage tasks. Keeping all client.
If I can interrupt 1 second. So before you get into that, so contact structure, can you give me an idea of what you mean by that?
Sure. So like in Redtail, I'll use Redtail as the example. You have statuses at the highest level of organizing contacts in your database. Then you have categories to explain people's rank within their status. Then you have keywords to further categorize someone within their category. And essentially what this does is, from a reporting standpoint, it allows you to run a report on, let's just use this as an example, all clients. And then clients by a specific type, tier 1, 2, 3, and 4, that we've, segmented our book of business based on what type of people that they are, or, whether they meet our AUM threshold or our advocacy threshold or whatever, right? We kind of organize the contacts at that level. And then we use a keyword or an additional filter to explain what their interests are. Do they make qualified charitable distributions? Do they have a RMD requirement annually? So that we can find the information that we're looking for the various contacts in our database. And if you check out the document that I'm talking about on my website, it basically standardizes the way I would organize my database, because there's more than just client contacts in there. We've got COIs, we've got businesses, we've got relatives of clients. You got to build all of that out in your CRM first. Right. To make things like assigning activities possible, right? We want to assign tasks, appointments, phone calls, and activities to our client record so we can build out a historical timeline of these relationships, right? Also for compliance purposes, if it's not in your CRM, it didn't happen, as they say, right? Right. Yeah. So we need to have the contacts in the database well organized so that we can link activities and notes and any sort of follow-up action items to, deliver our client experience and follow through on the promises we make to our clients. And I take the team through a process of really standardizing this. And what I like about it so much is that on the receiving end, from an administrative standpoint, it very clearly articulates what is expected of me. What do I need to do? What is the timeline in which I need to get it done? What are the priorities and expectations, and who is it assigned to? And then we use workflows in combination with tasks or activities to tell us then, how does our team handle that request? So you were talking about repeatable processes and building a scalable practice, right? That is nearly impossible if you don't have standard operating procedures. Right. So in my world, anything that is repeatable is workflowable. Therefore, we standardize the way your team handles all of those repeatable processes, documents them in a workflow format, and your who, not how. Go ahead. You're saying workflow processes. Can you explain to everybody the difference between a process and a workflow? Sure. So the way we use the two, so to me, a process is a workflow. And we use, within the database, we use activities and workflows in combination with one another. Meaning, I'll add a task within the CRM that says, hey, Frank, I need you to change a Benny. And I'm getting into the weeds here, but that's good. That's what we're doing. Automators that then launch the Benny change workflow. So you're not having to reinvent the wheel of, how to change a Benny. We've standardized in a workflow format, which essentially is a chronological timeline of step 1, 2, 3, and 4 that you need to execute a Benny change.
Got it.
And so this then is how we create that scalable, repeatable process. And then when designing workflows, we go through, a process with our teams to identify who is the best person on the team suited to do whatever that request or activity or workflow is.
Right.
So then the workflow is automatically assigned to that person.
Okay. Right.
They're not having to figure out each time who's doing the Benny change workflow. It's automatically routed to the person on your team who handles the Benny change.
Got it. So that executes the tasks, and you automate the tasks, and those tasks then get added to the appropriate person's calendar, right? And that's how
Exactly.
is that sort of how you step through this contact task calendar pipeline and account, right?
Yep. And exactly. And so those core functions we introduce to the team kind of in bite-sized chunks and build out a standardized way for everybody to manage those responsibilities. And then, like you were saying with the workflows, we use the workflows to tell everybody how to execute those requests. Nobody is responsible for memorizing how we manage the sales pipeline. We use workflows to say, at this stage in the sales pipeline process, you do this. At the next stage, you do this. On the next stage, you do this. So we really use those workflows to guide the team through how the firm is going to manage the various responsibilities, because
Right.
it varies firm by firm.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I talk about a lot with my content that I got from a friend of mine, Ed Milet, is habits and rituals, right?
Mhm.
And essentially, you're creating like business habits and rituals. Like I have a habit and a ritual that I make my tea every night.
Yep.
I don't make it every night, but I set it all up,
Sure.
so that every morning when the shower goes on upstairs, my wife knows she's downstairs. She puts the hot water on. So I come downstairs, bang, bang,
Yep.
bang, it's done. I'm in and out. I wear the same set of, same, 5 types of jeans, different, same color, different, the same type of jeans, different colors.
Right.
I'm automating and I'm automating and creating processes in my personal life. And it's no different in the business. And the reason I do that, and the reason an advisor should do that, is because it takes the mental thinking out of operating on a day-to-day basis, which means you have more room in your brain to
Right.
think about, part of the other things, right? Your pipeline and your account, going after new business. So let's jump to pipeline, for instance, right? Because
Yeah.
what advisors want to know, all advisors want to know. I mean, look, support staff want to know, how's this going to make my life easier,
Of
right?
course.
Advisors want to know, how am I going to make money doing this,
Yeah.
right? So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. And so I want to touch on your morning ritual for just a second, because we coach teams when logging into their CRM. There is a ritualistic component. There's 5 tabs that they need to open up in their CRM every morning. Can you guess what those 5 tabs are? Your contacts, your calendar, your pipeline, your activities, and your accounts, right? So that every morning when you log in, if someone calls in or somebody has a question, you're not fumbling through your database to figure out what you're looking for. Or you could be neck deep into something and someone asks you a question and you need to jump into another page. And I've done so much training with teams and I see people fumble around in this so badly. And it's so stressful that, why don't we just open up those 5 tabs in the morning? They're the 5 most common things we're going to look at and make our lives easier,
Yeah.
Save some of our brain space.
That's a great idea. Yeah, because most of them, I mean, at least in the wirehouse world, but also in this world, they want to look at, what their billing was for, yesterday. And
exactly. And so by using your CRM as a centralized hub, it's funny because some of the advisors that I talk to don't even know that these 5 functions even exist in their CRM.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're managing their sales pipeline in Excel or some other format, which is fine, but I am a firm believer of keeping everything centralized. Everybody on your team has visibility to it. It's a great thing to review on your Monday morning staff meetings and see who's in the pipeline, where's everybody at in the process. And so we design a system to answer the question that you just asked. Who are the prospects in the pipeline, the dollar amount of the opportunity, where the opportunity came from, so you can track sources of referrals or new revenue for both new and existing business. Who is the advisor responsible for bringing in, who's kind of the rainmaker in the relationship, so that you can run reports based on those metrics, right?
Right.
This one comes up too, like, I would love to be able to track, not only like who's in the sales pipeline, where they're at in the process, but if we are to lose opportunities, at what stage in our 5-meeting onboarding process do we keep blowing it? Because we need to refine that meeting. We need to refine our deliverables. We need to refine whatever. And so by, creating these systems within your CRM that are related to your sales pipeline, it makes tracking that kind of stuff possible.
That's tremendous. What about, this is an interesting point. What about processes when you bring a new client on board? Like I'll just call it client experience processes.
Totally.
Do you teach them how to create client experience processes? Like, hey, when we bring on we bring a new client on board, this happens and this and this and this.
Exactly. So when we start the process, we start with those 5 core competencies. We get everybody very familiar with the database, and then we get to jump into the bright, shiny thing, which is workflows. And so again, like I said, workflows are any repeatable process. One, usually where we start, is the new client onboarding process, a very repeatable process that, in my experience, a lot of advisors are constantly recreating. And so what we do is we talk about, what do you want this to look like? How many meetings do you want to have? Are you building the plan before they sign paperwork, after they sign paperwork? When are we doing the data gathering? But essentially, it's usually like a 4 or so meeting process. And let me just give you an example. We'll say we start with an introductory, qualifying phone call. Then we have them in for like a data gathering, discovery type meeting. Then, we build the plan and we deliver the plan and talk about allocation and investment changes. Then, we do all of the back end stuff of getting them onboarded to the custodian, getting them set up on all of our portals and creating their server file, all the back end stuff that goes into onboarding a new client. And then we have them in or do a Zoom meeting for like a new client welcome meeting, introducing them to our portals, going over their quarterly performance statement, and just getting them totally onboarded, right? Those, again, are 4 or 5 very repeatable meetings that we write workflows to help execute time over and over again, so that advisors aren't having to reinvent the wheel every single time they meet a new prospect.
Right.
And it's a great starting point, and it's a great exercise to go through, because the business owner is really having to think about the emotional piece of like, well, how do I want this to feel to the client, the new client? What am I trying to deliver here? What do I want this to look like? And then we build individual workflows for each different type of meeting that you have, to allow a little bit of flexibility, because not everybody follows that perfect 5-meeting sequence, right? If you meet with them, they've got $20 million they want to roll over tomorrow, like we should be able to like jump through the process a little bit, or go back, or do the same meeting twice if their spouse.
Yeah. Also, it's about how complex the opportunity is. I know for me, 100%. when I was an advisor years ago, back in the 90s, I also added. I was doing some of these things, I'll just say by mistake, but I was doing them like this.
Yeah.
I didn't have an assistant, so you had to figure out how to do stuff and process automate. But I always had a task reminder, although I was using a Franklin Day Planner. That should date me a little bit for those of us that remember what a Franklin Day Planner was, to do a 30-day follow-up to make sure right after they got their statement that I was calling them up saying, hey, listen, just got your statement, want to walk through it with you to make sure you understand how to read it. And adding it in there. So when I came in on a Tuesday morning, I had 5 names down there, just their name, but I knew statement review. That's the kind of stuff that that I know advisors are missing in their day-to-day. It helps the assistants also, because my guess is that most advisors are changing on the fly. The assistant doesn't know, well, what am I supposed to do this time? Because last month you told me to do this first. Now you're telling me you want this done first. what it sounds like to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. That expression "garbage in, garbage out" really comes to mind. That's what I've been. That's what I'm hearing. Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you don't put the right data in first, you can't pull it out. And as I tell my team, like we use Salesforce, like I want to make Salesforce dance, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I don't do it. I have a team that can do it, but like I know that as long as the data is in there, we can get it to do anything we want, right? So what do you see? Like, how do you help them when you're first bringing a client on board, whether they're an existing RIA or independent? I assume you work with independent broker dealers and RIAs, IARs, really, right?
Yeah. Predominantly independent RIAs.
Okay. Is there any reason for that other than just that's where your niche is right now?
Honestly, some of the BD baloney, it just makes it really difficult.
Right.
I actually really like working with LPL advisors. But for the most part, we work with independent RIAs between, I would say, 200 to 800 mil, with teams between 4 to 12 to 14 people. Okay. Seems to kind of be our sweet spot.
Got it. So so with that understanding that, listen, it's all about what does the data look like before you start? How do you get teams, and I'm saying teams, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's actually probably more important if you're just a sole practitioner. Right. But let's just say it's a team, a couple of people. Where do they even start? Like, I know we talk about contacts, tasks, and all that stuff, but what do they start thinking about? How do they start collecting data? If they're going to hire you, right? Say, I'm going to hire you. Kate, I'm going to hire you. Mm-hmm. What the hell do I do first? What do you want me to do next?
Yeah. So we shepherd the entire process, and we've built out a timeline, because we've done this numerous times, to make it a very enjoyable, process that we do in bite-sized chunks, because it's a lot of new stuff to teams. But we start with a CRM assessment, and I've got Joe on my team as a data expert, and we create an export of all of the contacts in your database. And we basically poke holes in all of them and see areas that we need to improve processes to obtain and maintain information better. And so, I mean, if you're just an advisor and you're looking at your database and you're wondering kind of where you chalk up next to the next advisor, see how many contacts in your database are not labeled. See how many contacts don't have a status or a category. See how many contacts. What I find the most is your brain works different than my brain. When you put somebody in the database one way, I might put them in another way. It's just the nature of the beast. And so you need to standardize. This is why it's really important to create like a contact hierarchy and establish who are the contacts in your database and how should they be labeled. And it has been, in my experience, at the highest level, with the status that you give these contacts, you shouldn't have more than 12. Anything over 12, you run the risk of somebody in the database possibly being 2. So then you run into an issue where you label them one way, I label them the other way, and then your reports are wildly inaccurate.
Right.
So you need to get very clear on who are the contacts in your database and start getting them organized.
Okay. With that said, what do you think the top mistakes are that you've seen? So you go in to work with somebody and they have a system and they're, they have they have Red Tail. Mm-hmm. And they're saying, hey, Kate, we got something, and then you go in, what are the biggest mistakes or areas of opportunity you see that they're not doing, that based on your experience, you're able to go in and just tweak some things? What are those tweaks?
Well, so I kind of mentioned this in the beginning. Advisors pile on too much technology and they're not really using any of it very well. They don't have the foundation in their CRM, or they're just no fault of their own. They're just not familiar with the functionality that's available to them. So they pile on additional technology that they think they need to solve whatever operational issue that it is. And it's for the team, it's very hard. Let me give you this example. So the name of the business is simplicity, right? So we try to take a simplistic approach of managing operations and not piling on 10 different systems to figure out what you're working on. Some teams, have Asana for their tasks. They have, Redtail for contacts. They have Outlook for their calendar. They've got Slack for their direct messaging. Like, wow, that's entirely too many places to have to figure out what you're working on today.
Right.
Or if client calls in and says, hey, where are we at on this? I'm having to go to 5 different systems to figure out where are we at on this. That's why having a centralized hub in your CRM is so important, so that everybody on your team knows exactly what's expected of them. Priorities and expectations are set all, within one place. And most of the teams that we work with truly are teams. And in order to be able to operate as a team, you need to be able to see what other people are working on and be able to pick up where somebody else left off in the case of an absence or a termination or whatever. And that's really hard to do if you've got Post-it notes for tasks and 5 different places where you're having to go to figure out what's going on.
Got it. Okay. Now, this is a sort of the last question, and I sort of wanted to take you through this timeline, right, of operating the business. Then it was sort of building the business. We're talking about prospects and efficiencies, giving you more time. I believe, I should say, again, I don't believe, it's a fact, that having processes in place when you're looking to sell your organization actually increase the value of your business, because there's a higher likelihood of replicating the revenue, retaining clients, all of those good things when you transition from one firm to another.
Exactly.
How have you seen that impact with your clients, if any?
Right.
I don't know if you've gone through that with any of your clients where they've transitioned to whether they've rolled up into a bigger RIA or just sold or whatever. How have you seen that impact with your clients?
Sure. Yeah, I've worked with clients that have merged businesses, and it also holds true if team members change. And so by standardizing the way your team operates and having these systems in place, it doesn't really matter who's doing the work. The people can change, the management can change. As long as the systems are in place, your clients are never going to feel the change. Nothing's going to slip through the cracks. Again, you're not having to reinvent the wheel. And it makes for, selling your practice and merging practices and taking on new team members possible.
Yeah. And so, the message to advisors out there that are saying to themselves, listen, I'm retiring in a couple of years anyway. What do I need to go through this hassle for?
Mm-hmm.
This is exactly why you need to go through this hassle.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying hassle that it's a hassle. It's worth all the time in the world. But if you're thinking about selling your practice, or transitioning to the younger generation of your practice,
right,
and your compensation is tied to retention and future revenue,
exactly,
it's why you need to be doing this right now ahead of time.
Right. And I'll give you a perfect example. A lot of the teams that we work with intend to meet with their clients on a proactive basis, right? Let's say they meet with their top tier clients quarterly, the next tier, semi-annually, then annually, and so on and so forth, right? Regardless of who's delivering that experience, the client is now conditioned to be met with at some sort of regular cadence.
Right.
So by setting that up in the database in your CRM, again, if I pass my book off to you or my business off to you, all of that is already set up. So my clients are not even going to notice. Again, the clients don't care who solves their problem. They just want their problem solved.
Right.
And so you need to have those systems in place to continue solving their problems, regardless of who on your team solves the problem.
Right. And I know we're talking about Redtail and Salesforce and all that stuff, but the reality is if you're using Black Diamond, for instance, right,
Yep,
there's reporting in there. And so part of this having the systems talk and work together is so that if you have those regular quarterly meetings with your clients and they're scheduled in your CRM and your contact, that your Black Diamond reporting is producing those reports at the same time, so you're not having to like, oh wait a minute, I have the meeting, but now I got to go back to Black Diamond, I got to produce a report. So all of these systems are there, and advisors need to know that they are there. There's some really smart people that built these systems. They just need someone smart to help them. So, which gets to my question about you, and this is sort of the last question. So I appreciate your time. I respect that.
Yeah,
and everybody listening. There's so much more we could talk about, but
I could do this all day.
We got it. I know. That's the problem I have sometimes. How does a client? This is not the like how do you work in their CRM and Redtail, but how does a client engage with your company?
Sure.
Are they paying you? Are you with them monthly? Are you just coming in and setting it up and they're charging you one fee? Like, what does it look like for if I'm hiring you to help you with my systems?
Yeah, good question. So like I mentioned earlier, we start with the CRM assessment, and we basically put together a big data export, poking holes in their system. And then I put together a plan deliverable like, hey, if I were you, if this was my firm, these are the systems that I would put in place. We basically give them a plan of action.
Right.
And they pay $3,000 for the plan, and so it's theirs. If they've got somebody on their team that's operationally minded, they're welcome to take it and put that plan into action. Most teams at that point hire us for a 6-month engagement, and we take them through, starting with the organization of the contacts and then getting into our 5 core competencies. And introducing these topics in bite-sized chunks again to ensure mutual adoption by everybody on their team, because that's super key. And
training and all that stuff, right?
Oh yeah. And so we introduce the topics, we train the entire team, we implement all of the systems, all of the workflows, all of the automations, all of the additional integrations, and then we teach the team how to use it. And then once we wrap up at the end of the 6 months, the team has a very good understanding of the functionality and how the systems operate. And then we work with them on an hourly basis going forward. If they need additional support, we work with them hourly. But it's basically a 6-month, deep dive engagement with a standing weekly hour call where we introduce the topics and collaborate and talk shop and build out processes and procedures.
Okay. Awesome. And where do they go to find information on you call it Simplicity Ops, but I guess that's the short version of the name.
Simplicity Operations is our website. You can check us out there, get some more information on what it is we do, who we serve, and you're welcome to reach out. There's some additional resources on there. Again, some of those organizational documents you can download to start working on cleaning up your database. And then if you would like some additional assistance, please schedule a call with us. I'd love to talk to anybody that would like to get the most out of their CRM.
All right. What's your phone number that they can call you at, and your email?
My email is kate@simplicityops.com.
Okay. And they have somebody, a main contact they can call you at?
858-602-8533. And it's all on our website.
Got it. Awesome. Kate, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. This is a topic that most advisors just, they don't want to pay attention to because they don't think it's directly tied to dollars and cents. But in reality, it's exactly tied to dollars and cents. Maybe the most important thing because it's going to give them the opportunity to expand their business. And the one thing the final word here, because I mentioned it to this team when they left yesterday, because I was trying to convince them that they needed to hire a chief operating officer. And he kept saying, well, yeah, well, when we're ready to make that, that expense, he kept calling it an expense. Well, we're not ready for that expense yet. I said, listen, first thing you need to do is stop calling it an expense, and you need to call it an investment in yourself, because it's a huge difference in language and mindset. Because if you can get somebody to take all those things off of your plate, you can then go out and bring in more business. So it's an investment.
I could not agree more. Well said.
Yeah. So I'm passionate about that part of it, and it's really important. So listen, this was awesome. I really appreciate it for my audience. I hope it was educational for you as well. I always try to make these as educational as physically possible. I think we hit the ball out of the park here. So Kate, I appreciate it very much. Thank you again, and I hope you get some people that call you and need your help. So I know that they do. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been
Thanks
a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics in the financial services industry, or you just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcasts.